Todd, are you parked?
Right.
Yeah.
It is 2 o'clock. It is 2 o'clock, Todd. I'm going to turn it over to you, and if you will go ahead and kick this off.
Well, hey, everyone. I'm Todd Atlas, president of EO Raleigh-Durham. Hello from my car. It's one of the beautiful things about these virtual meetings is that you can have them from anywhere. This is technically our 4th virtual learning event, and we're calling them Coronavirus and Your Business. What started out as a way to connect our chapter in light of canceling all of our in-person events has really grown to a lot more, thanks to EO Global and Olivia for inviting global EO members and helping us get the word out across the country. We'd love for these to be as interactive as possible, so please open the conversation up with questions and interactions, and Matt will definitely let you know how that's done in just a moment. We will put up our collective email addresses, both Matt Siemens and mine, in the chat. So if you have any suggestions about future content, we'd love to hear from you and help make that possible. Before we get going, everyone should have received invitations for these events. Those who have attended will be receiving an invitation for the next event once we book it. That's going to be around turnaround and reboot strategies from both a corporate finance and legal perspective. We'll be learning from longtime EO member and supporter and YPO member, and as well as an attorney, Tad Van Dusen from Williams Mullen. They'll be co-presenting and providing experience from the turnaround around corporate finance and strategy side of things. Exact date coming, probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, but we'll get the word out for you guys. But before I waste too much of your time, let's turn it over to Randy Nelson. He's a former Navy Submarine Officer, EO Raleigh-Durham founding member of 20 years, a best-selling author, who will be helping us process through a contingency plan. And Randy has been mentoring a number of our forums and providing a whole bunch of different business support in a variety of different ways. He'll be talking to us today. Quickly, turning over to EO's Matt Zeman, who will be moderating today. He'll tell us how we're going to kick this off.
Right, thank God. Just a couple of housekeeping items, everybody. Everybody's muted right now. So if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A panel, which you should be able to find on your control panel, or just raise your hand in the attendee panel. I'll see that your hand is raised, and then we will call on you as soon as we can. If you have the same question as someone puts in the Q&A panel, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, which ranks it higher in the priorities so that I can get that to Randy. And then we're going to unmute. Hopefully we'll get this to be pretty interactive later in the call, with a number of you speaking, adding what your thoughts are, talking directly with Randy, and going back and forth. As a quick reminder, today's webinar is going to be recorded and shared. So please don't share anything here that you wish to keep confidential. We're going to be sharing Randy's deck and the recordings on our website, eoraleigh.com/coronavirus. There you can get the recordings of the last webinars that Todd was talking about. You can also get all the handouts from those webinars. So that is where we are. And with all of that being said, I'm happy to turn this over to Randy Nelson, and I'm going to take myself off video, and Randy, take it from here.
Thanks, Matt and Todd. And I want to thank Matt and Todd and EO Raleigh for, first of all, being creative. These are times where all of us have to be really creative. So I think when you had to go virtual, you came up with a great idea to do these. I think what you've done even better is create a series that are helping people. And that's my goal today, is to do some help. I know you're reading lots of articles, as I am, every day on how leaders should do this during a crisis and not do that during a crisis. Keep doing that. My goal is to give you some practical experience and some must-to-dos today. As I look at the screen, I have to say, I think it's probably better that we call this ELO, contingency planning. Dates myself a little bit, Electric Light Orchestra, anybody who remembers them. ELO, Entrepreneur Leadership Organization. To me, this really is a leadership webinar as much as it is an entrepreneurial webinar. So if you keep that in mind for the remainder of our time together, this is all about entrepreneurial leadership, and it's time that as entrepreneurs, you're going to earn some leadership badges as you navigate through this crisis. Matt, if you can go to the next slide. I would love to tell you I have not had experience, but 9/11 and 2007 crisis, both of my businesses ended up declining by 70% before we turned around. So ideally, a crisis is significant. It most likely will make a lot of businesses out there smaller versions of yourself. But if you can become a smarter version of yourself as a leader, your company is going to be better off. Your employees are going to be better off. So I think if I share one lesson at the very beginning is it's okay to be a little bit smaller as long as you get the chance to become bigger after this is over. Matt, if you can go to the next. This is where I want you to go today. Make better decisions faster and with more confidence. With the must-dos, and I'm just going to dig into them. I'm going to give you some tools that you can do that's going to help you to make these decisions faster. But ultimately, it's some more confidence. I think EO members, we never lack with it, but I'm going to give you a little bit different type of confidence, hopefully, to take away. So Matt, if you can go to the next. Everybody out here, this is what it looks like on the right. And if you're in Raleigh, I know we've got some members from Raleigh on this call too. Today, our two biggest cities went locked down through the end of April. Many of you on this call, some of you, I think we have somebody from India in total lockdown in the country. So we have the right side out there right now. And every day that we're not in control, it looks like that. But ultimately, our job is to make that look like the left. And I'll give you a couple ideas that can help you do that as you're navigating these tough waters. Go ahead, Matt. This comes from the chapter 13 in the book. I think if you've registered for this, you have the chapter. If the book is on Amazon, enough said about that. Matt, if you can go to the next one. So the first must do, track your leading indicators daily. There are two different types of indicators. There are leading and there's lagging. Leading, why it's critical to track those now and to be looking at those on a daily basis, is they're going to influence and predict the future performance. Your financial statements are going to come out in a month and they're not going to look good. They're going to come out in 2 months and they're not going to look good. But your leading indicators starting today, you can have some idea of what happens. So Matt, if you can go to the next one. In 2001, our first business, which is now placed 50,000 veterans into full-time work, in July of 2001, our leading indicator, and I put up their job order matrix value. It's sales pipeline. So I want everybody on this call to think about your sales pipeline. In July of 2001, we had a total job order matrix value. If I added up every single company that was interested in hiring either military officers or military technicians, we had almost $20 million in job order matrix value. Because we tracked the numbers and we knew how that converted, ultimately that would convert on a monthly basis at about 10%. So about $1.9 million to $2 million a month, we could project that our business was a $24 million business based on our job order matrix value, our sales pipeline number. You can see in October, after the 9/11 crisis, within 30 days, that number was down to 11 million too. Now the 6.5%, it took us a month or two to get and figure out exactly what our conversion, but I put it here to make a point. An $11 million business, an $11 million leading indicator, which ultimately became a 6.5, told us that we were going to go from a $24 million to a $9 million business. Had I known all of the answers that I'll share with you today, we could have made even quicker decisions. But in your business, I'm going to recommend, I say 7 to 10 leading indicators. That was at a recent speaker talking about the economy. That's what he pushes organizations to have. I think in your case, the leading indicators at the company level, look for those immediately and track them daily, because that's going to be your only predictor of what's going to happen. Matt, if you can go to the next one. The number two is again, I'm going to ask you to get more objective in your decision making. Entrepreneurs, we are known for our gut. We're known for our guts. But I'm going to ask you to think about numbers, percentages, and data sorted percentages, because we're in a position where your decisions have to be made quicker, and making the wrong and right decisions can be very, very costly at this point. So if you go to the next, Matt. Matt, if you can go to the next slide. 4 different types of decisions. If I knew nothing about your business at all, and I came into every one of you on this call, and I had 5 years worth of history, I understood 5 years worth of your critical metrics, your leading indicators, but I didn't understand anything that you did as a business. I still could make gold level decisions with that. If I had the gut feel to it, I'd have diamond level decision making power. Having been an EO member for 30 years, having been now a public speaker, speaking to leadership groups, EO groups, for the last 6 or 7 years, unfortunately, the majority of us live in that bottom right, which is the cubic zirconia side. We trust our gut, we believe our gut, we know the numbers that we want to know, but there's a lot of numbers we're leaving on the table. And I think for the next, if we go to the next one, Matt. Yeah, so I want you to, again, keep in mind numbers, percentages, and data sorted percentages. So go ahead and go to the next map. I'm going to put 3 slides up. The first one, lots of numbers. So if you can imagine with me that this is your business, it's grown from $1 million to $8 million, current year budget. You have 5 years worth of history. You have profit numbers that continue to grow. You have lots of different numbers. So you have history. What's hidden is, on my screen at least, is a 2022. So that would be the strategy in the future. But this is the first way to look at your decisions you're about to make, is by pure numbers. Secondly, I asked you to think about percentages. So I'm going to give you the same exact company, same exact time period, but I'm going to give it to you in a different view. Matt, if you can go to the next slide. So all I've done here is I've taken all the expenses that are part of your company, this $1 million to $8 million company, and I've now made an apple-to-apple comparison so that the percentage of expense of revenue is now indicated on the line. Matt, if you could back up for a second. So in this sheet, if given enough time, you could probably make some really good decisions on this, but you would end up doing some additional calculations. When you go to the next sheet, go ahead and go to the next one again. This will give you a much quicker way of looking at it. And Matt, if you go to the last sheet, this is what I would encourage all of you to do, is to go and quickly get your truth and your trends on paper. In this case, you can see now that for this company, payroll is its largest percentage of spend at current budget 47.5%, marketing 16%. But in each case, you can look over the 5 years and you can see what has happened on an apple-to-apple comparison. Now, when you add in your gut and you add in your knowledge of the business, because you were leading this business in 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19, you can now look at these things and say, hey, I understand why that number went there and that number went there. So as I show you the example of my own business in 9/11, you're going to see the importance of this and why it would have been critically important for me to know this sooner. So Matt, if you go to the next one. I mentioned that 9/11, we had our own crisis, as many of us are going through again right now. These were the numbers. This is what happened to our business. We were a $24 million business. Our leading indicator said we were going to become a $9 million business, which is what we became, only a little bit less. We became a $7 million business. So you can look at the numbers in time, but what I want to highlight is that over 2 years, from 2001, late 2001 to 2003, because I had built a company that had grown 50% a year for 10 straight years, the entrepreneurial dream, had been to birthing a giants for EO, now called EMP. So I was out there doing a lot of the right leadership things, but this was the first time the company had to have a downturn, and we had a big downturn, just like many of you are going through right now. I tried to be as professional and as nice as I possibly could, but in the end, we went through 6 rounds of layoffs. What I did and our partners did is we looked at where we were in the company. We knew we had to cut expenses, so we cut expenses. And then unfortunately we had to do it again. And then we had to do it again. So for us, we went through 6 different rounds of layoffs. What I will tell you is if you're already in a layoff and you're thinking about a second round, the minute you do your second round of layoff, you probably have lost the culture. If you do a third, you absolutely have lost the culture. The difference between the 9/11 and 2007 crisis and now is that there's not as many places to go because so many industries are being affected. But be careful to say this is as bad as it's going to get, because unfortunately we never really know if it can get worse at this point. So back to the example. These are numbers. For 2 years, I made decisions based on numbers, but you'll see in 2003, the operating profit was still 0. Rich Russakoff last week did a great talk on SBA, and he mentioned cutting expenses and eventually getting down to the bone. Well, if we cut any further in 2003, it would have been muscle. So if you go to the next page, Matt. Again, the leading indicator predicted this was going to happen. I want you to have that leading indicator. If you go to the next page, it wasn't until mid-2003 when the percentages, which I've given you the example of, gave me the answer to this. We had cut a lot of money in payroll operating expenses. We had gone down in revenue, but until we realized the percentages, and you can see for us, the payroll percentage in our profitable years was 50%. Our operating expenses 30%. We were operating profit 20. Until I realized that 65% was payroll, I didn't find the problem. So by getting to your percentages and your data sorted percentages, you can get to the actual critical numbers that you need to look at so that you can make better decisions quicker. If you go to the next, Matt. For us, this became not a simple game, but we knew what we had to do. We had to set a 50% target for payroll. We had to get back to our operating expenses, and at some point we would get back to that profit. But knowing where you need to go, this is the number data, the numbers of percentages and data percent, and sorting it by data percent. Matt, if you can go to the next one. One thing I will tell everybody here is if your high percentage of your company is payroll, and for a lot of companies, it's going to look similar at that 50% level. When we were at 65%, we could not cut pay anymore. In fact, our productivity had gone up. The people that we still had on board, they wanted to be there. They were producing more. But until we went to a variable compensation pay model, we didn't fix the problem. When you're looking at your variable and fixed costs right now, I would ask you to challenge every fixed cost that you have. Is it truly fixed, or can you make it variable? Because your goal right now is to reduce your monthly expenses as low as possible, and pay from a variable comp standpoint, pay people all the money in the world that they deserve if they can bring in revenue at this point. In fact, incentivize them more. But your goal at this point is to reduce those fixed costs. Check all of them, see what you can make variable. Okay, Matt. Contingency number 3, values-based leadership. 3 C's are going to cause change, controversy, and crisis. This is when your values are going to be tested the most. The 4th C is courage, and that courage is your courage to live a survival story. The 5th is creativity, so that you can thrive in the long term. But your values are going to be tested like no time ever before. There are going to be revenue opportunities, but if they're the wrong type that you're going to completely break your values for, you're going to be left with very difficult decisions. I can tell you in both companies that I've gone through these crises with, tested, very much tested with values. But Matt, if you can go to the next one. I spoke about leadership in the beginning. I think it's critical for everybody as entrepreneurs to understand the term WIFM, W-I-I-F-M. I've gone through my own. I've helped many companies through their own, and in the last 2 years, I've been sitting in clients' offices when some crisis or another happened, and you could just see the fear on the face of the employees. W-I-I-F-M. What's in it for me? Your employees, they have been extremely loyal. They are an invaluable part of your company. But I think as entrepreneurial leaders, it is critical that we understand that they are scared and that they want to help in any way that they can, but they have to take care of themselves, just like you do. So communicate daily. Again, get back to the read lots of things of what to do and what not to do. But I think it's critical for the entrepreneurial leadership journey to look and understand that every one of them wants you to make them feel safe. That what's in it for me is that they're going to somehow be okay. Just be careful about promising things you can't deliver. Okay, Matt, if you go to the next. Your culture is your values and purpose. Just to finish up on this, your core values, and I use Jim Collins. There's lots of people out there that great resources. Your core values should remain unchanged. In fact, that's why they're there. In the most difficult times, your core values are only so good as you can take a revenue hit and maintain them. So all those core values that you built in the company, use them as guiding principles as you navigate these times. Your core purpose can change. This is why you matter to the customer. I'll show you a slide in a couple minutes on where some new companies evolved during difficult times. But I mentioned it earlier, your culture is going to take a hit. In my experience, you're gonna feel like you've lost control of your culture. And most likely you probably have, because there's so much things that we are not in control of right now as entrepreneurial leaders. It's the things you can control, like leading indicators and understanding your numbers. And we'll move on, so see what's left for you here. And then by 2:30, I want to open it up for questions. Go ahead, Matt. Okay, number 4, the reset button. It's a critical tool. And it's used during these significant downturns. It works best when it's pushed firmly, late in the game or half-heartedly. You may feel a little bit better that you didn't do it right away, but remember, you have to preserve the business for those who are still here and to be on the other side of this. So the reset button, Matt, if you go to the next page. What I'm gonna ask you to do is come up with 3 different models. And I use 20% decline, 40% decline, and you pick your number. These numbers have to apply to your company, but it's a number exercise first. And maybe in some cases, because this has been so rapid, you've already had to go and actually make the cuts. But again, a smaller version of your company that survives is much better than a larger version that fails. So utilizing what I talked about with leading indicators and the numbers. Matt, let's go to the next page. The model for reset, and I think Matt, everyone will get this. Presentation, so you can use this and blow up the numbers if they seem a little small. Same company as before that went from $1 million to $8 million, where I showed you the numbers and then the data and then the percentages and then sorted that. This was the 2020 budget for the company. The percentages, they planned on 15% profit. They plan on a profit of a 1.192, and you can see all the different numbers that go with the percentages. When you do the reset exercise, get the critical leaders that you can have in this that understand you haven't made these decisions yet, because the reset, in an ideal way, you're making the decisions in a non-emotional way before you have to make them. So I picked 40%. In this case, the $8 million business is going to take a 40% cut. Maybe your leading indicators help you understand that very quickly, but it's now a $4.8 million business. In a reset model, and this is covered in that chapter that I've sent to you, the very first decision you have to make as the entrepreneurial leader is, what are you willing to accept for the next month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months for a profit? If it's zero, it's zero. If you say, I still have to make 5%, make 5%. If it's, I'll take a 10% hit, we've got a lot of money in the bank. But the first number you have to decide is the profit. Once you decide the profit on a $4.8 million, you now know how much you can spend. Then it becomes a numbers exercise. In this case, I've given you an example of cutting to a 5%, where what those numbers look like. It's your company. You know your numbers, you know your gut feel, you know how you can operate your business. this is going, you work the numbers, but start with the profit, because too many times I have seen companies make the mistake that, well, I can't cut anymore. I just can't do it. I can't do it. And I've gone through with way too many companies where we said, let's sit down and let's go through the exercise. You can. As I said in the beginning, a smaller version is better. A lot of companies are born out of recession. And there are new entrepreneurs who will jump in this. So if your $8 million business became a $4.8 million business, the mental part of this is you still have a $4.8 million business. 96% of all businesses don't get bigger than $1 million. So yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's tough, but you still have a $5 million business. So the reset exercise will take you through and help you make the decisions on how exactly you can make this thing work. Okay, Matt. The entrepreneurial ego, it's a beautiful, powerful thing, but sometimes it does prevent us from doing what should be done. And now these are the must things that have to be done. I think for any of us who have been on this call, who've been around for a long time, we know. You can go to the next one, Matt. Before I get to that, listen, in a submarine, I was a submarine officer before I became an entrepreneur, which I've been the last 30 years. We used to call it a jam dive. We would have people that were driving along nice, and then somebody would just force us that we're heading straight for the bottom of the ocean. And the only way that we could get from reaching test depth and crush depth is we had to know what to do. And this is the USS Buffalo. I don't know if we have anybody from there. On the surface, listen, it works, but sometimes we all have to figure out a way to get back to the surface. So if you go to the next one, Matt. There's going to be another recession. In the beginning, I said we got to become smarter. There's going to be. Look at the reds. There will always be another one. Matt, if you can move the next. The optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. The pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity. I love everybody to remain the optimist. Just get a little bit more objective as you're going through. If you go to the next. Great companies are created during recessions. Every one of these things, and you can Google it because that's how I get my information on this. They were created during recessions. And if you go to the next page, Matt, another company reinvented itself pretty well following the dot-com bubble burst in 2000. It wasn't in 2001 until Steve Jobs started working on all the things that we deal with today, which are fabulous solutions. So if we go to the next. The second decision is all on, before they let me drive a submarine, I had to be qualified. We had to go through all this contingency planning, the jam dives. It doesn't work that way for entrepreneurs. We just get our company and we grow, we grow, we grow. Trust me in this, you are going to become more qualified as an entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur leader by going through these times. I wish you didn't have to. I wish a lot of us didn't have to, but you are going to be better off and your companies are going to be better off for it in the end. Go ahead. 1995, I was a guy on the left. I stayed in the hurricane. We thought it'd be pretty cool. Hurricane Luis, storm of the century coming. I've learned it's a little bit better to be on the right side. And I think all of us at this point, I think this crisis came so quickly that enough said on that. Start boarding up when we need to board up. Number 5, this is critical for you. The third decision book that I wrote is all about life aspects. This is about your non-negotiables in your personal life while you're building your business. So I'm going to ask you to come up with what is non-negotiable as you are navigating the crisis. Not open for discussion, not willing to compromise. And I'm going to give you one that I think is absolutely critical for you. Be selfish with your fitness. Be selfish with your health. People question me in the 9/11 and in 2007, did I really do all this? The answer was yes. I had 6 kids that we were raising at the time. We still did all the things that we said we were going to do. And this is more important than ever for you to maintain your health and your fitness. So make this a non-negotiable. You will be better off. Your employees will be better off. Your company will be better off. Don't say, once I get through this, I'll find a time to exercise. We've got to stay healthy and make it a non-negotiable. Number 6, Matt. Once the expense work is done, once you've made that commitment to stay healthy, then it becomes a revenue exercise. Ultimately, this webinar is about 3 things. It's about revenue, it's about expenses, and it's about leadership. Once the expense work is done, get to a whiteboard and figure out, get creative, get courageous. Where is the revenue going to come from? Revenue levers, that's how you make your revenue now. Figure every single way that you've made your revenue. Get that 5 years worth of history to see how how those are going, and what's out there now that you can change, that you can grow, that you haven't done before. Get your expenses, get your revenue, lead those discussions. But there are opportunities for revenue if you get creative, and especially if you're maintaining your values. Go ahead, Matt. Great leaders, tough decisions at the most difficult of times with a sense of urgency. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Matt. Are we stuck? I added the word.
I did. Can you see it?
Yep, I did. Yep. I added the word to what I asked you, what I said that I'd like you to walk away with is make better calculated decisions faster and with more confidence. When you have some data, when you have some objectivity to this, you see the truth and the trends of where you've been, you can make those better calculated decisions much, much quicker when you've got that information. So Matt, if you can go to the end, I think it's maybe the last slide. Yeah, I'll end here because I want to leave some time. It's 2:31 for questions. If I can help somebody during this, you've got my email there. I'm going to sign up for a 30-minute call. Again, I would love to say that I don't have experience, but unfortunately over the last 30 years, it's been plenty either through myself or through others. So we're all in this thing together. Again, I thank Matt and Todd and E.O. Raleigh for setting this thing up. Hopefully this has been helpful for those who have joined the call, and I'll stop here and see who else wants to add some valuable information and questions. So Matt, I'll turn it back to you.
Awesome, Randy. This is fantastic. There's some questions in the Q&A panel. Again, as a reminder, if you have a question that you just want us to ask Randy for you, go ahead and put it there. If you'd like to speak yourself, raise your hand so that I can unmute you and get you talking on this webinar. But let me start with an anonymous question. When you made layoffs, Randy, did you make any pay cuts as well?
I did not in the beginning because I hadn't had those percentages. I made too many numbers on numbers in the beginning. I would recommend when you look at pay cuts, real quick answer to the variable comp. Variable comp is there's three different ways to look at it. You have the fixed and the variable. If somebody is hitting the numbers, then keeping their pay the same or the fixed and the variable portion works. If they are one of your outstanding performers, they're willing to take a pay cut if you incentivize them more and give them even more money than they would make than they would in the first place. The key is the third one. With a variable comp plan, if for the people who are costing you more money, when I say 50 cents on payroll or 50% on payroll, that really means you're spending 50 cents on every dollar on payroll. So come up with a model in your company of how many cents for every different level within your company you're willing to pay. What I found when we went through the model was some people, I wanted to pay 20 cents to salespeople. I was paying 40 cents to some of them. So the answer was I had to reduce their fixed cost until I got to the 20-cent model. And then I was okay. So long answer, but if you've got your percentages, you can find out really quickly. Don't just look at it at numbers. And I'll use this example. I won't even say any names to this because I don't want to make them sound bad. But they said we need to cut these two top people. They're making $300,000 and $200,000. We can't get through this thing. We're gonna cut them. When I did the percentages, they were costing us 10 cents and 15 cents. The $100,000 people were costing us 35 cents. Be careful of numbers, look at percentages. They will help you make better decisions.
Very cool. St. Clair from Dallas chapter, what are your thoughts on cutting marketing budgets? What do you do with that? How do you look at it? Randy, can you hear me?
Oh, I thought you were asking somebody in Dallas. I'm sorry about that.
No. That's right. St. Clair from Dallas was asking that question to you. I am just a conduit between Dallas and you right now, Randy.
Sorry, I blew that one. Can you give me the question one more time?
With regards to marketing, what are your thoughts on cutting marketing budgets in a crisis time?
I think you have to get back to the revenue exercise. And what I've learned, I'm not a marketing expert, but what I've learned is when I spend marketing dollars without knowing my strategy, I'm spending it wrong. In the case of where you're at right now, where is your revenue going to come from? Spend your marketing to help you find that revenue and stop spending your marketing where that revenue is lost. That would be my general statement. There's opportunities for you to grow revenue in ways that you didn't think you had before. How can you do something to generate leads for that can help you in the revenue you need to? So get a little bit more strategic in your marketing, spend more where you need to, less where you need to.
Awesome. So a couple people online had the same question that I have, which is, in retrospect, Randy, would you have done deeper staff cuts earlier versus doing multiple cuts?
Yes.
And okay. And then are there ideas, and how do we get to the more, how do we get to what's a more realistic cut? What are some lessons learned from that?
Well, and I'll share it from my experience, absolutely. And in the book, in the chapter, I give some my takeaways for of what I wish I would have done. And wish is a bad word. The hardest thing in the world, let me say this, is what you're about to go through. Many of you, these people don't deserve what they're going to hit or what they're going to get, which is for you to tell them there isn't a job anymore. My son's in the restaurant industry. He didn't deserve to have his restaurant shut down, but a lot of people don't deserve where they're at right now. Yes, I would have made deeper cuts much quicker because I would have known the numbers. And I think there's a certain amount of I would have absolutely went quicker sooner. And the second part of the question, Matt.
Second part was just around how do we get to that more realistic cut? And are there any lessons learned or anything else, or is it just all about literally doing this exercise?
You know what? I would get back to the leading indicator, because the only thing in your business that's going to predict what's going to happen in the future are your leading indicators. So for those of you who have them in your business, look at them. If you don't, try to put together as much as you can. Everybody's got a pipeline. Everybody can look at pipeline numbers. Look at your economic indicators that apply to your business and see what's happening to them. The unemployment rate, we know that's going to be horrible. But if you're in manufacturing, you're looking at PMI. If you're looking at a semiconductor, you're looking at book to bill. Does that all of a sudden in a month go from here to here, or does it stay steady? Because there's a lot of disagreement on whether we're in a U or V-shaped recovery right now. So I think leading indicators and talking to people, but if you don't have orders coming in, your hand is going to get forced to cut more.
Very good, thank you. So Clark out of Boston, Clark Waterfall, Boston chapter, wants to know, did you find that certain functions were more mission critical and that other functions were less? Did you cut proportionately so that you could keep a little bit of every department? What was your logic there? And that's
yeah, I think sales is critical. I think having people to continue to sell in a downturn is critical. How we controlled that was we did the variable comp to make sure we had the right people. And I'll emphasize again, my best performers in the downturn, and they've told me this when we made the cuts, they said that the very best thing we did was to allow them to make more money. So I changed the comp plan for the very best performers to make them have them make more and better. Administrative, look at the percentages again. Somebody who makes $100,000 and somebody who makes $20,000, you can have 5 of the 20s, but is it critical or not? This is where you have to get inside that room and say, how can all of us do more? And who do we absolutely need here that we're cutting into muscle? Because when you cut into muscle is when you've gone too far. That's when you have to think about, do we even have an ongoing entity here?
So Randy, Grant Hensel out of Chicago has a great question. You went through 6 rounds of layoffs. Was the culture ever able to recover? And how did you rebuild the spirit? Let's fast forward to the virus is behind us. How did you rebuild the spirit of your organization, or did you not? What happened?
First of all, it's going to change. The culture will never be exactly the same afterwards because the fast growth, we've never had layoffs, we've never had any problems. That's gone forever. I would say, if I'm summarizing it, at first, the people who needed to go needed to go. So there's always unproductive people. Those are gone. They're going to get to another job. You're going to find that you're going to, once you've gone through the layoffs, you're going to be left with your people who you want to go through this time with, and they want to go through it with you. So you almost you become a tighter team once the downsizing has stopped, and that's your team that you're going to go forward with, because they've stuck with you. They've been loyal. They want to be part of the solution. The more you can move people to a different career, and I know it's hard right now because there's not as many opportunities, but you need people eventually. You need to have this tight-knit team that you started with, and at some point during those layoffs, you're going to have another tight-knit team that says, hey, we're in this thing together, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get out on the other side. You just have to navigate from here to here, getting to the point where this is the team that I can go with.
Makes sense, Randy. So Michael Osborne out of Charlotte. Considering many are expecting a fast rebound, are you looking at this crisis different than 9/11 or the Great Recession? What are your thoughts on this particular crisis versus 9/11 and that other one referenced?
Yeah, I think they're all different. I think when I look at the data, there are so many spikes in this that are incomparable to any other recession. So you're going to see, they're saying like 25% negative GDP. That just doesn't happen. So I think the unknown in all this is how much collateral damage is there, and how, even though it could be quick, I think it's the unknowns. It's what I don't know right now. That everybody's trying to guess. So if you're trying to hold on to people because it's going to be a V-shaped recovery, again, I do contingency planning on that. I would say do a contingency plan for a U-shaped recovery, do a contingency plan for a V-shaped recovery, and what does it look differently to you? Because there's so many different variables this time, every industry. So do the restaurant people not go back to the restaurants? We just don't know a lot of things right now.
Good point. There's a few more questions here, Randy. I know we're getting close in time. Igor Serrata out of Boston. What are some other examples of leading indicators? He can think of 2 or 3 for their business, but 7 seems like a lot.
It does seem
macro or industry. What would you do?
Yeah, it does seem like a lot. I know there's a lot of EOS fans out there. There's a lot of Rockefeller Habit fans. There's a lot of 4DX fans. If you read any of those books, they talk about leading indicators. 4DX has a really good chapter. And Matt, if you remind me, if 4DX has a really good chapter, I probably shouldn't forward a chapter I took from 4DX, but people can, 4 Disciplines of Execution from Sean Covey. They have a really good chapter on leading indicators. I'll use a sports one. And in baseball, if you've ever heard of Billy Beane, he's the Oakland Athletic general manager, who he said the ultimate lagging indicator is wins and losses. Everybody in baseball hired the biggest name players because they could help win more games. What he did was he think upstream. So when you think about a win, what happens before a win? What Billy Beane did was he found people who got on base. If you get on base, you're going to have a better chance of scoring. So if you think about a leading indicator, don't think about the sale. What happened before the sale? If you have to go do a demo, how many demos do you need to do right now? So in the next 30 days, you can say I need to have $100,000 in sales, but the only way you're going to get sales is if you do 50 demos. The only way you're going to get 50 demos is if you have 100 presentations for people who then will convert to a demo at that point. So you have to keep thinking, what's the step before the step where I make money? Get to your wherever your brainstorm position is. Start with a sale. What happens before it? Again, what happens before it? What happens before it? What happens before it? So for everybody, since revenue is critical right now, the number of presentations, a number of sales calls, a number of in-person visits, a number of demos, a number of interviews, if you're a staffing company, the number of first interviews is a leading indicator because you can't have a placement until you get a first interview. So go upstream in your pipeline process.
Randy, Johnny out of Minnesota would like to know, do you have a template spreadsheet for any of the analysis you shared? So I know we posted your chapter at eoraleigh.com/coronavirus for anybody to download, but is there a templated spreadsheet that you can share is really the question.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. I can create one that you could use. So I could work on that if I don't have one right now.
Awesome. So when he does that, we will post that at eoraleigh.com/coronavirus. So I'm seeing we're right at time. Let's just take a couple more here. One of the questions, if you have from Braxton in Raleigh, thoughts on SBA loans that may be advisable with a forgiveness component. So if you could borrow money as a grant, would this change your mind about layoffs? Is really, I think, Braxton's question.
Yeah, and I'm gonna defer that. What we have to be careful of is when we try to say that we know things we don't. So Rich Russakoff had a great session on SBA last week. Matt, if you can connect that Braxton to Rich, I think Rich would be the right person to answer that question, not me.
Perfect. That sounds great. So a couple of things here. For those who are joining, or as we wrap this up, Rich has a offer that if you would like 30 minutes of his time, he's cleared his schedule. I think he's done 30 meetings in the last 4 or 5 days. It's been kind of incredible. So he's happy to help out. SBA questions, that's who I would go to. Randy is offering 30-minute free calls as well between now and April 10th. So I will again post his information at eoraleigh.com/coronavirus. It's here in the deck. It's in a lot of different places. We're pushing here the edge. One more thing that Randy mentioned is he said, begin with the sale in mind. Kenneth Marks from High Rock Partners, he and Tad from Williams Mullen will be doing a webinar next week. And that is those are two great people to talk to about beginning with the end in mind and what are the things that you are trying to drive towards for that successful sale and how does that affect your decisions kind of in real time. I just saw that Sergio from, let me see here, I'm not sure what chapter Sergio is from, wants to understand, is there a time element that you recommend in the context of this environment for how long of continuity plan you should plan for in terms of maintaining financial resilience? In other words, not just the magnitude of recovery, but the duration. Do you do a 2-month plan, a 6-month plan? What do you think?
Yeah, I think right now, how far can we really look out in this thing? I don't think you can look out past 90 days, and even then it's hard. So I think your contingency plan is for the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I don't think there's any way you can get out to 120 with any confidence right now. So you may, in a time, maybe this will work. I'll try it. I think Vern Harnish, he gave us, if it's your company is growing 0 to 15%, you write a business plan and it's good for a year. If it's growing, let's say 25 to 100, every quarter you have to change your business plan. And if it's greater than 100% every month. So just reverse that. So if there's a downturn of 15, 25, 30, 40% in the business, at the most it's good for a quarter. You're going to have to revisit, and I would revisit it because every day, for those of you on, again, Rockefeller Habits, EOS, 40X, whatever operating system you use, now is the time more important than ever to do a daily huddle. A daily huddle is going to tell you the most updated information, and it could change right then. So 90 days, I think, is the max I would even try to look out, but even then, I think it's a stretch.
Perfect. Let's just take one more question. Sergio, by the way, answered that question. He's from Connecticut, so thank you, Sergio. Let me see here. A very specific question from an anonymous participant. They have a good team. They want to avoid layoffs. Do you have a recommendation on how to take a salaried employee to a variable pay or pay cut? Is there any specific guidance you can give on how do you do it? How do you have that conversation?
Well, I think there's an equity component that can come into this. I'm not sure what the company's doing right now, but there is phantom stock, there is equity. what's in it for me? Okay, I would go back to that. It's if you can get people to take zero pay and stay with you and give them nothing for it, that's an option. If I think it comes back to for each of you has to make that decision. What are you comfortable with? I think staying in business is the critical piece. If somebody's willing to forego salary, are you willing for some of that to be put towards equity? Get creative in all this. We hate to lose good people, and good people want to be part of the team, but even the best of people have a family to take care of. And what's in it for me is the last thing they want to do is leave you. If you can incentivize with something that maybe they hadn't thought about, it may keep the good players and the great players on your team.
All right, Randy, thank you so much. We are a little bit past our time here. For those attending, if you'd like to get in touch with Randy, we're going to go ahead and put his information on our site, eoraleigh.com/coronavirus. One person we didn't thank in the beginning was Amy Hending, who is our chapter manager. She's done a great job in just working around the clock to get all these things scheduled and these invitations out and all of that. So thank you, Amy, for doing that. We are, again, Kenneth Marks, the turnaround and reboot strategies from a corporate finance and legal perspective. We should have that date and time shortly, and we'll post that on that site as well as a link to register. Finally, you have my email and Todd Atlas's, who's our chapter president's email. And I'm going to repost it right here in the panel. But if you have suggestions for future topics, please send us an email directly. We are trying to get as much content created as possible. And again, Randy, thank you. This was awesome for you to do this. And I'm sure the people who take advantage of your calls will find that to be super helpful. So thank you, Randy, for your time today.
Yep. Good luck to everybody. Go out and remember, it's time to be leaders too. You'll get on the other side of this.
There is another side. Absolutely.
All right,
Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you.